Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining me for episode 16 of Friday Book Bites. And today I am joined by the lovely Tricia Stringer all the way from South Australia. Hi Tricia, thank you for joining me today. Now, sorry, you're right?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. That's all right. We're having, just so the audience knows, we're having a slight technical issue. We've tried all the things we know how to fix. So if there's a little bit of a lag or a dropout, please just bear with us. Now, Tricia is the author of many, many, many novels, some rural romance, some historical saga, and where I met Tricia as a reader in her women's fiction, contemporary women's fiction novels. And today we're going to talk about multi-generational stories. Now, before we launch into that, Tricia, I'm just going to pop up the details of the giveaway because otherwise I forget to do it by the time we get to the end. So for anyone who leaves a comment or asks a question, either here during the live or if you are watching it back later until midday Sydney time on Saturday, you will go in the running to win a copy of Tricia's new book, which we'll talk about a little bit later, The Family Inheritance. And it'll be a little bit of a wait before you get it, a week or two before I can send it off to you. And I might send some chocolates in the meantime just to tide you over, whoever happens to win it. So that's our giveaway for today. Again, thank you so much for joining me, Tricia. And multi-generational stories is the topic of today's session. And I wanted to ask you, first of all, as an author, what draws you to writing multi-generational stories?
I love them because I think you get so many different perspectives in multi-generational that perhaps you don't get if everybody's around the same age. So you've got, an older, a middle, a younger, there's so many, obviously, different ways you can go with it, even down to having children in the story. So I think, and each one of those characters then brings a different perspective to the story, and it just adds more colour, I suppose. I quite enjoy that.
And do you think that's the same for the readers, why they enjoy them? Because they are quite popular with readers.
Yes, that is possibly the reason. I know as a reader myself, I enjoy that. I like to, listen to the points of view of different ages, not to be just focused on something that's perhaps my age group or in just a younger person's age group.
Exactly. And do you find yourself, when you're writing multi-generational stories, that you're drawn to one particular character and that age group more than another, or is it different as you write it?
Look, it is different as I write it. Every character, when I'm writing a story, I love, and I feel as if when I'm writing their story, I feel really a part of it. And then move to the other one, and then you feel a part of that. It's but I do like to be in the different age groups. I just find it all more interesting.
Yeah, I tend to find that I enjoy writing my older characters that little bit better. I don't know if it's because I tend to have more fun with them or whether it's because I'm heading towards that age group myself.
Yes, it's tricky, isn't it? I think it depends what the older person, what age group they are. But I'm really cautious of not stereotyping older people, and especially as I'm into my 60s, and I think of people that I know in their 70s, 80s. They're not quiet little old people sitting at home with this new technology. So you have to expand the thoughts of what might interest people in that age group.
Yeah, and that actually leads me into the next question that I wanted to ask you. What are the pitfalls when you're writing multi-generational stories?
well, I guess I alluded to that before in saying, you know, we don't want to pigeonhole people and expect they're all in the same, you know, just because they're a certain age, do a certain thing or act in a certain way. So I think that is easy to fall into, you know, if you've got sort of an idea in your head. And sometimes I find I do it myself. I have my character doing something or behaving in a certain way, and it's out of context with who they are. In the family inheritance, there was an example in Edit where I have Greta is the youngest of the characters in the book. She's about 25, and she has since childhood had a favourite DVD movie that she loves to watch that just, you know, makes her feel good when she watches it, and it's her fallback. And so I had in this story her popping it in the DVD player in the apartment or the unit that she shares with her boyfriend, and he's just a little bit older than her. So my editor said, oh, you know, how many people that age have a DVD player anymore? And I went, how many do? So I went off and investigated, and I came across people of that age who know they don't have a DVD player, but they've got Xboxes or things like that where you can play a DVD and they still keep their old favourites to play. So I thought, oh, you know, it's a little thing, but you just have to be aware that, you know, what is part of my life is necessarily part of a different generation.
Yeah, so do you find yourself in that case having to do a little bit more research than you probably thought you would, given that it's contemporary fiction?
Yes, so that's in the case of that example. It's sometimes the little things like that that you don't even imagine, you know, make a difference. But thankfully, for good editors, pick up little things that I missed.
Yeah, I've had that before with my story, the first story, the Kookaburra Creek Cafe. I have a character who we see in her teenage years, which is, I think, and I'm stretching my memory here, in the early 1990s, and I had her with a mobile phone, and I had to think, hang on, did we actually all carry mobile phones back then? You know, we take those things for granted now, and it's those little things that can trip us up so easily as authors.
Yes, yeah. That's right.
So, sorry. In the family inheritance, which you just touched on there, you actually combine two of my favourite things, a multi-generational story and family secrets. What do you think makes this combination so delicious for us as readers?
Oh, I mean, I guess for me, I always think, you know, there are, we all have secrets. Some of them, you know, in my family, not very exciting that I know of.
That you know of, yeah.
I know of. But when you talk to people, you know, they'll suddenly pull out this snippet that's happened in their family that you think, oh my goodness, like that's so intriguing. And quite often they don't find them out until perhaps somebody older has died, or you know, there's been some big change in the family, and this secret is then, for whatever reason, whether, you know, people are not concerned about the hurt of my cause or whatever it is, that they let this secret out. I think that happens so many times. And even though my book's not out yet, people in the blurb, like you have already said to me, oh, this sounds like something that's happened in my family. I think, so, you know, I might get lots more intriguing stories out of this.
You might. I know when my paternal grandmother passed away, we always knew there was something in her history. We weren't quite sure what it was, but then I came into possession of her papers, and I noticed that she had changed the dates and the ages on her marriage certificate. And that's a story I am dying to discover the truth of. But of course, nobody's alive now to tell me. So.
No. So you just make it up.
Well, I've made up quite a few stories about her in my head. One day I'll write one of them. Janet Courtney, one of our readers here, is talking about the older protagonists, and she's saying that we're a lot more fun. Yes, I absolutely agree with that, Janet.
Well, yes and no. I mean, every generation has, you know, the things that happen in that generation that perhaps as older people we have more experience. So we just think we've had more fun. We've had more time to have fun. But yeah, I think every age group, certainly there are things that you can explore and have fun with at that age group. And we've all, there's all complexities for everyone and highs and lows. And, you know, when you've got a cross-generation, I think too, what if you're in the head, say, of the older person, then another person their age might tackle what's happening in quite a different way to a much younger person. So that helps, you know, bring some interest into the story too.
Yeah, and actually Tracy made a comment similar to that. She likes reading books with multi-generational characters. She finds that the characters usually have something to teach each other. And I absolutely agree with that, Tracy.
Me too. I'm absolutely right.
And the other thing I find with that is that they interact with each other differently, just like we do in real life. The way I interact with my mother would be different to the way I interact with my grandmother, and that gives us a lot more interesting dynamics to mine as an author, I think.
Yes, I agree. And I think that's what I was going to say before, is it's that how we react differently to each other and across the generations. Yes, definitely.
Absolutely. We've got a question here for you, Tricia, from Nicole. And she would like to know, where do you get your characters' personalities from?
Oh, Nicole, thank you. Many voices in my head. I don't always like to admit to that, but I just love meeting people. And I think when you meet a lot of different people, there's sometimes a little gem that will come. And I don't mean I'm copying someone's personality, but it might be just a way they move, a way they say certain words, or the kind of clothes they wear. It could be anything that just sparks a little something in my head, and I might just tuck that away. And so when my characters are coming to life, that little arsenal of characteristics, I suppose, helps bring them together. I remember one night being at a dinner with a group of people, and it was a lady I hadn't met before. She had the most gorgeous, she was older than me, grey hair, which was, I suppose, a bit like my hair is today, just a little bit longer, and she wore it pulled back. I can't do it back the front. This piece here, pulled back with a lovely bright clip, and I thought, you don't see people of her generation wearing a clip like that. And it just stayed in my head, and I used that characteristic for in the model wife, for the grandmother in model wife.
Yeah, I like to think of it as cherry picking, that we cherry pick, you know, maybe a physical trait or a turn of phrase from different people that we know, and that then helps us launch into an entirely different character. It's not the people that we know, but it's just that one little quirk maybe that gives us an inspiration for a character.
Yeah. Well, without meeting that lady, I would never have thought to do that. So I just love that, you know, she brought that bit to my mind, and then it helps you to develop the character. Why does she wear her hair like that? Why does she like to wear a bright? So I don't know in reality why that person did, but I just make it up, you know, with my character.
Yeah, well, that's what we do, right? We fill in those gaps. We have a question here from Claudine, and she would like to know how different you are finding writing contemporary fiction compared with rural, and do you have a preference?
Well, I had to answer this question just recently, and for someone else, and I it's quite tricky. I've enjoyed all three. I love them. I love reading them. I love writing them. I think for me, the contemporary fiction has more challenges, exploring the characters more deeply, perhaps. And I've learned so much more from writing that about me as a writer. So I think I love all three, but certainly the contemporary perhaps is the biggest rewards as a writer.
I'm finding that answer really fascinating. Do you think it's more challenging because you don't have the historical storytelling to rely on to fill the pages, and it's got to be character driven?
Certainly when you're writing historical, you can use all those old, all the history to put your characters in and out of. And I think when I wrote, it just depends. I mean, I'm sure that there are very character-driven historicals, of course, but with mine, I make it more as a kind of like a swashbuckling adventure story, and so that's how I wrote it. So with the contemporary fiction, it very much is about the characters, how they interact with each other, and I guess, as you say, not those extra props of the history to add to the story. So you have to dig a bit deeper and find out why they are like they are and why they're behaving the way they are. That sort of thing.
So do you think you'll stick with contemporary fiction for the next little bit, or?
Certainly, yes. I'm finishing next year's book, and that is another contemporary fiction, and I haven't thought about the next one yet, but I think we're still going in that direction. For a while there, I was managing 2 books a year, but I'm finding with the extra detail that goes into contemporary fiction, for me, that's not possible. So I'm just sticking with it at the moment. See what readers think, and keep going.
That actually leads very nicely into Cassie's question, which is how many books a year do you write, and what is your daily routine?
Yes, 1 book a year now. And when I was doing 2 books a year as well, some of those books I've already been writing in the past, so I could sort of partly done. I've run out of all those bottom drawer books now. So for me, it's just a daily routine. I write every day I try to aim for 2,000 words. That's my deal, and sometimes that takes me a couple of hours, sometimes it takes me a whole day. Just depends what else is happening, but it's a daily routine. I think writing every day, if there are too many gaps, then I forget where I'm up to, I'm backtracking, so I like to try and write. I do try and, have a weekend off, obviously, and it's work. I start work between 8 and 9 every day, and I stay there until my job is done.
Yeah, absolutely. I find the same thing. I'm nowhere near as disciplined as you by the sound of it. But I do find if I have too big a gap, I'm working on it. If I have too big a gap, it then takes me a while to get back into the story and find those feelings again. So
Yes. And, you change too many things.
That's true too. Caroline would like to ask you about Table for 8, which is this one here. Did you take a cruise to research this novel?
It's just about to come out with a new colour.
Oh, I like it.
Yes. Kind of goes nicely with the model wife. Yes, Caroline, I did. Thank goodness. Because I wouldn't be able to do it now. But I've had a few cruises and absolutely love them. And so the first cruise I did was to the South Pacific, and that's what I got halfway through that cruise and I just thought, there is so much here to write about. And I got myself a notebook on the beautiful island of Lifu, where the ladies had some lovely homemade notebooks, and bought the book there, and that was the start. I started writing on that beach at Lifu, jotting down the notes and the memories, and that's how Table for Eight came about. And I think some people on a cruise, so they relate to it, and the people that haven't feel like they've been on a cruise when they read it. So I think it's particularly great now. If you're not cruising, at least you can read a book about it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I did too, so that it's not coloured by everything that's happened.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. My mum was due to go on a cruise this year, but obviously that's gone by the wayside, like so many things this year.
We had one book for early next year, but no.
Yeah. Now, Karen's got it's a tough question. I'm going to warn you before I put it up, Tricia. It's one of the hardest questions that we face as writers. And that is, do you have a favourite book that you've written?
I always say that it's like making me choose between my beautiful children.
Yep.
So if someone asks me who my favourite child is, I always say the one that's standing closest to me. So with my book, it's the one that's closest to me right now, and the one that I guess I'm currently most invested in. So the family inheritance, is definitely at the moment. I guess it's precious. It's I'm still with the characters, and so it's the one that I would pick. But too hard.
It is, and I'm the same as you. The one that you're currently in is the one that's the favourite.
Yeah.
Bev's got a question for you. She would like to know, do you write your ideas down as you think of them, or do you memorise them?
I write them down. I'm not finding the older I get, the not so good all the memories. So I like to write them down. I've got notebooks everywhere, and the book that I'm writing, if I just this is my notebook for next year's book, but it's scribbled everywhere. So I just scribble at any time when I think of something. It's not appropriate what I'm doing right now, but I think that might happen later or whatever. So I do, and yes, also in my handbag, everywhere I've got little notebooks just in case the thought strikes me. The only one that doesn't work well, I think in the night, do I write them down? I could never read what I write, so I've stopped doing that. And I find that it's usually still there first thing in the morning, so I write it down then.
There's a cartoon that does the rounds of Facebook every now and then of that, the person waking up in the middle of the night, writing down the idea, and then waking up in the morning and it's like blue pajama peanut butter or something like that. And you're like, what does that even mean?
What does it mean? And even that is words, like mine's often just scribble.
The boys from Happy Valley have got a question for you. They would like to know, is there a destination in the world where you would like to base a story?
Oh, look, my friends tease me. Hi, Craig and Phil. They always say, Tricia just goes on holidays so that she can find the next place to write a book.
And what's the problem with that?
Yeah, exactly. I don't have a problem with that. I often, though, what I find is that I've been somewhere and, visited a new place, and the idea comes later. Perhaps because I'm now familiar with that place. I don't go there. The only thing that I would say that might be different to that is that I'd really like to take Ketty from Table 8 on a train journey. And so I would have to plan that in advance to go do that. But mostly, I've been somewhere, and when I'm writing, I think, these characters could go to that place, be in that place.
Mm-hmm.
So
would that train journey be in Australia or overseas?
Yes, an Australian train journey. I'm particularly keen on going at the moment, the idea of that journey. So, maybe.
Now, you've mentioned...
Anywhere in the world. If I could get there, I had lots of ideas for places that I might go. I haven't travelled a lot overseas. I've been to a few places, but not many. And so, yeah, I definitely, that I've been on that burner for a while now.
Yeah, I mean, at this point in time, we'd take anywhere we could get at the moment, wouldn't we? Now, you spoke about the family inheritance, and Karen's asking me about my next book. When is actually the inheritance out, Tricia?
The family inheritance is out October 7th, so less than a month now.
Less than a month. That's excellent. And I don't have a date for my next one. It is currently beside me in a pile of papers, but probably the first half of next year for mine, Karen.
That cafe that I am just reading at the moment. It's amazing when you contacted me, because I was actually reading your book. It's as if we had telepassed each other. Is only recently out though, isn't it? Like earlier this year? Yeah, that
came out in March, just before the first lockdown happened. Yeah, so I'm not due for another one until sort of March, April next year.
My TBR pile.
Oh, yeah. If I could turn the camera around, you could see my piles all over the house. Vanessa's got a great question for you. Have you ever researched your family history, Tricia, and has that helped in writing any of your characters?
I haven't done a lot of research myself. My sister was the historian in our family, and she did extensive research. And her work and another cousin is so great that I would actually like to turn it into a historical story. But I'm not sure when I'm going to do it. But I haven't done it myself. So I'd be relying on her research and then probably go and do some more myself. Sorry, I think you're on crack.
Yes, no, that's okay. It's okay. Yeah, your own family history would be an interesting one, wouldn't it? Because it's probably a lot richer than we think it is. Obviously, my grandmother's got some secrets I need to find out. But it could also be really dangerous opening those, that Pandora's box, so to speak, and finding things out about people that you thought you knew that maybe you didn't.
Well, certainly the family history that I'm talking about, it was obviously a very large family, which often were back in the early days. And so my branch of the family has quite a different take on how ancestors arrived in Australia to another branch of the family, and it's quite a definite. They both believe they're right. So it's quite interesting, the differences.
Yeah, it's funny how we always think of history as fact, but it's never actually fact, is it? It's a matter of perspective.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
So I'm just checking for any more questions. The boys would very much like to see Ketty and the Garn. Oh, the Gan, sorry. I keep calling it the Garn, but it's actually the Gan, isn't it?
I think, yes. Depends where we're school.
Oh, and Tracy recently went on a cruise. Her sister surprised her for her birthday for a family reunion, and they got it in just before the ships got stopped.
Oh.
So. Oh dear. We were supposed to go to Spain and Portugal in April. Needless to say, that did not happen.
No. Well, this year we were planning to caravan around Western Australia. That was our plan, but that got too. I'm really sad because I was going to have events in Western Australia too in October, but
yes.
They're still not keen for the rest of us to come. So fair enough. We have to do what we have to do.
We do. It's a strange world we're living in at the moment, and all we can do is go with the flow. I'm just conscious of the time. I'm going to pop up the contact details for Tricia. So if you've got any last questions that you would like to ask her, pop them in the comments section now. Now, this is just a sample of the books that you've written, obviously, Tricia, because you've written so many. So I just cherry picked a few of them there. But there are Tricia's details if you want to find her anywhere online. So we talked about the family inheritance coming out in just under a month now. Do you have events lined up within South Australia? Because your restrictions are a little bit looser than some of us on the East Coast here.
Yes, well, every cloud has a silver lining, and so it's meant that we can do more South Australian events. So yes, I've got a local event here in my area, several in Adelaide, and then I'm going to Eyre Peninsula. And I've got, I think, 6 events over there, another one down the bottom of York Peninsula, so a busy month ahead. And also some online sessions with some of the libraries in Western Australia that I couldn't visit. We're going to have a Zoom session with one I know, so and the launch with Better Reading, which will be live. So, you know, plenty of chances to catch up with readers, even if it's not face to face.
Yeah, and thank goodness we do have that option of meeting up online at the moment. It would be a very lonely place if we didn't have that, I think. Bev would actually like to know, what can you tell us about the story of the family inheritance? You know, we've spoken about multi-generational secrets. Can you give us a little bit more detail?
Sure. So the story starts with the death of the patriarch of the family and his wife. Most people, lovely Hazel, most people would expect that, of course, she would be terribly distressed. She's not quite so distressed. I mean, obviously she's sad, but she is thinking now that she might be stepping out from beneath his shadow. And a long-lost sister of hers that the rest of the family didn't know about is about farming, and she turns up. Hazel's daughter, Felicity, has just turned 50, and some things are revealed after her father dies that, you know, the family secret that turns her world upside down. And 25-year-old Greta, Felicity's daughter, she finds herself in a kind of the mentor role of trying to hold these 3 women together at the tender age of 25. She's not really that keen. She wants to get out and her own life. So those 4 women then interact in the story, and, you know, some really tough things happen to them, and that's how they come to terms with that, and becomes.
Excellent. I'm going to finish with just a couple of comments. One is from Tracy, who said there have been so many online book events and it's been the one good thing about lockdown. Yeah, I would agree with you on that, Tracy. Yeah. And then something from Chrissy, which goes back to the Pandora's box that I mentioned before. Oops, sorry, I clicked on the wrong one. Where did you go, Chrissy? There you are. She used to joke about her husband's family secrets until she investigated her own genealogy.
Yes, yes, indeed. People in glass houses, Chrissy.
Yeah, that's what I said. You're never quite sure what you're going to find out. So, all right. Exactly. And it looks like Bev is actually going to be going to one of your events on the 13th of October, and she's looking forward to that. So make sure you make yourself known, Bev, to Trish when you get there. Thank you so much for joining me today. I apologise to our listeners that we had some hiccups with the sound there. My husband is a computer engineer, but he is on a business call in the other room, so I couldn't call him in for help. But that's life online and life live, isn't it? So
yeah.
All right. Thank you so much for joining me, Tricia. Thank you, everybody, for listening and for popping in your questions. And I will see everybody again next week for another session. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Andy.